Well, hey guys, it's Dr. Drake 63 here. And what you're looking at is a couple Remington 742s, also known as the Woods Masters. And these guys right here were produced from 1960 to 1980, and there were about 1.4 million of them produced. I happen to have two of them in my possession right now. Neither of them are mine. This one on the right you see belongs to a friend who had asked me to put a new scope on it for him and sight it in, which I will do prior to deer season. The one on the left belongs to a friend who was looking for me basically to clean this up and see if I can find a new home for it. So, but I have owned this same exact firearm in 30-06 in the past, and we're going to talk about this one a little bit today. Stay tuned. Just taking a little bit closer look at these guys. As I said, this is known as the Woods Master, and both of these are in 30-06, as was the one that I owned prior. You can see that this is a magazine-fed semi-automatic rifle, and we'll take a look at that in a second. But real nice job on the wood on these. Both of these are in good shape. This one on the bottom is in just phenomenal shape. Hasn't been shot much at all, and you can see that this one is set with iron sights at the moment, which I know I'd want to put something way back here for a better picture, a better sight radius. But and this one right here has been retrofitted with a scope. It's got a basic Weaver type rail that's put on there, and like I said, we're going to put a different scope on there. But this was a real popular firearm. These things were produced. They weren't expensive, and we'll get into that a little bit in a second. But this is the firearm. I don't mean this one in particular, but my first semi-auto rifle was a Remington 742, and I really love the concept of just being able to pull the trigger and pull the trigger again and pull the trigger again. And now this one doesn't really lend itself to a lot of volume shooting at all, and again, we'll talk about that in a second. But it did become kind of a gateway for me. It got me into some other things, such as ARs and AKs and Galils and things of that nature that you see on my channel. I mentioned these are magazine fed. You can put 4 rounds of 30-06 in these. These were also made in other calibers with a long type action, such as 270 Winchester. Also made shorter style, 243, 308, things of that nature. But a nice metallic magazine had to be inserted in order to fire. So I want to call your attention to this bolt here, and if you look at the design here, you've got a number of very small lugs that lock into the receiver as the bolt rotates. This ended up being a problem in terms of the design, as well as some metallurgy that was questionable, that would result in those grooves that are carved in where the bolt locks up becoming scalloped, which would pretty much make the firearm inoperable. And that was a real common problem for folks that wanted to shoot this rifle a lot. It wasn't as big a problem for folks that just wanted to, take a couple shots to zero in and shoot a deer every year. So really all we're doing to take this front piece off here is there's a screw, just a simple flathead screw, and you pull this out. This one has a sling mount attached to it, but this whole section here comes out, okay? And this is the piece that holds your forend in place, and apparently, there you go. It comes right out like that, as you can see right here, okay? And then that is what holds your 4-piece on. So what does that leave you with? leaves you with a mechanism which is strangely familiar if you watched my Remington 7600 takedown video. The 7600 is the pump version of this. So here's what the pump version looks like, and as you'll see, you've got the same kind of action arms and everything else. Just instead of having a gas block at the front, you've got a spot where you attach the foregrip for pump. So basically what you have is you have a gas block right here, okay? This gas block is attached to this action arm, so when I pull back, it exposes what you can see here, okay? So your gas tube's coming off your gas block, and then it's pushing back on your piston arm, I'm going to call this. So in other words, this tube right here is just the tube it travels on. It's not the gas tube itself. Here's your gas tube. It marries up right here to your piston, which recocks the gun. You might be able to see this a little bit better. Right there is your gas tube, your gas block attached to your barrel, and that's attached to your action arm right here. And then every time that fires, it's going to cock this back and chamber another round, okay? What can go wrong on a scenario like this? Well, the biggest issue with these firearms, as I mentioned earlier, was metallurgy. Okay, so there's a few things about this. Number one, this is a thin-walled barreled rifle. Okay, this heats up. You take this to the range and say, you know what, I want to go fire 10 shots to zero this thing, and inside a relatively quick period of time, this barrel's going to heat up and its harmonics get bad. So it's really hard to hold a group with this design. The second thing, which we already talked about, which was the whole concept of you're going to be shooting up, or the more you shoot, the more you chew up the insides of this thing. Okay, there's nothing you can do about it. Okay, so when you compare this to, say, let's say another 30-06 semi-auto or even full auto, like a Browning BAR, and I'm talking about the BAR that was carried in late World War I through World War II. Okay, all forged parts. Solid receiver, the whole 9 yards, and this just isn't built that well. Okay, so the exact same mechanism that you're going to find inside the Remington 7600, the pump action version, it's just that you've got a blowback operation here with this gas tube, as we showed you. Okay, and that's what's different. Now, this firearm has not been shot a lot, but you can see how this lends itself to corrosion. Okay, so if you don't keep that clean and you don't keep this tube where the spring and the whole mechanism travels clean, the action, it's probably not going to function as well. So besides the metallurgy thing, you basically, what you have here is a Remington 870 receiver, and it's just not really built to shoot a lot of rounds. Okay. Now I know that this is a firearm that a lot of guys are gonna use, and it may be the only hunting rifle they've ever had, and it may be a situation too where they only zero it in and take deer with it. It'll last you a lifetime if you do that. But if you take it to the range and you want to pound out 2 boxes of ammo, 3 boxes of ammo, you're just not going to get a very good performance, and it's going to chew the gun up, like we said, pretty bad. So that's something to keep in mind. This, like I said, is in good shape. Okay, it just hasn't been fired a lot. My friend, who I'm curating this for at the moment, has let me know that his father, who this gun belonged to, probably didn't shoot 20 rounds in his lifetime through this. But you can see it's the same kind of bolt. I'm not going to get down to taking this thing completely down and everything, but it's interesting to see how this works. It's a very simple design, and it's a little bit crude. I mentioned it was the same basic bolt as the 7600. This is the bolt from the 7600, and there is a pretty basic difference here, and it's all the way to the left. We'll zoom in here. The locking lugs. There's a lot less of them. They're a lot bigger, more robust, and this was a change that was also made to the later 7400. The other thing I want to show you here, this is your foregrip. It does have a metal lining here, which acts kind of as a heat shield. It's a good idea. And so some of the kind of things you probably need to think about in terms of tuning this gun, for lack of a better word, is how tightly are you tightening this front takedown screw? Because if you're tightening it too tight, it's probably going to affect your harmonics. Are you keeping this clean and lubricated? And that's one thing that you want to make sure that you do. You need these action arms to be clean and lubricated. You need this spring, and you need to make sure, once again, that you've got this particular gas tube cleaned and not lubricated, but cleaned. Okay. As you can see, there's a little bit of corrosion in there, but that's about it. Here's your gas block, and let's see if we can get a little bit better view inside of there. Okay, you've got your gas block here, and that's actually where that takedown screw goes right in. Okay, and that looks like it could use a little bit of lube, a little bit rusty. So if I were to drive this pin out in the middle, I could take the action arms off, so forth and so on. But like I said, that's a lot of work. I don't really have a need to do that. I just wanted to show you the basic working principle of this firearm today. I mentioned to you here that when you're tightening this takedown screw, you don't want to gorilla tighten this down. You've got a washer here. The screw in this case is going through this sling mount, and if you gorilla tighten this thing down, it's gonna affect your harmonics, like I said. In most of the cases, your first shot, which is the one you want to make count, not such a super big deal, but just something to look out for. You've got this spacer here, and people want to tighten things just as tight as they can. I've seen it on the bands, on lever guns and stuff like that, and when you do that, usually doesn't turn out as well. Okay, you're going to notice here I've got the magazine inserted. It is empty, but I want to show you real quick. I've got this pulled back now, and it's staying open because the magazine's inserted, and the way you get this to release is actually part of the magazine. Your action release is on the magazine. So I'm going to push forward on this. It's spring loaded, and that's going to release the bolt. Let's see if we can show you that. There you go. So kind of different to have that as part of the magazine. That's not a design I would have necessarily chose, but there you have it. Okay. As you can see on the top, you're drilled to go with any number of type of options for mounts. If you want to put a rail like you saw on that other rifle, however you want to do it. But it's a 30-06. This guy will pack a punch. A lot of deer have been taken with this firearm. I have no qualms with this as a deer rifle at all. Keep it in mind that what you want to do is zero it in with 4 or 5 shots, if that. Take it deer hunting. A lot of guys will complain that their follow-up shot is a jammer at times, and you know, a lot of that's just going to have to do with understanding your firearm, understanding how to take it down and what parts to keep clean. Okay, but this is not a military type of firearm that you're just going to fire over and over and over again. It's not of the same design quality as the sporting versions of the Browning BARs that you see out there. It just isn't. That's why Remington abandoned this design in 1980. They went to the 7400, and later on went to the 750. But you know, just in terms of accuracy and things like that, you know, target rifle, guys that want to shoot the living heck out of a rifle at the range, not a recommendation. But there's a lot of these out there, and if you know how to maintain them and you're willing to spend the time on them, they'll serve you well in the woods. So I hope this was a little bit helpful. I know a lot of you guys watching this probably either have this rifle or at one point in time had this rifle. I have a little bit of a sentimental attachment to it myself. Would I take this hunting in lieu of a bolt action? No, I would not. Remington put a lot of these out, and a lot of guys have them, and I'm certainly not here to knock them. I just want to let you know my experience with them. I've had them jam. Other guys complain about them. I also know that if you do take it down, you can make these things work for you. So just know what you're getting, and don't be disappointed if it isn't that 200 rounds per range visit kind of firearm, because I'm just going to emphatically state that it's not. Anyway, I appreciate you checking this out with me today. This is Dr. Drake 63 saying so long. Thanks for watching. Remember, support the Second Amendment any way you can.